Skibidoo beep bop. Hey, welcome to Something Powered. I'm Dan,
And this is Aaron.
and today we're going to be talking about some of our top licensed games.
Mm-hmm.
So, why don't you go ahead and tell us what a licensed game is there, Aaron?
Well, a licensed game is based off of an existing property that didn't really originate from a video game, which includes movies, comics, books, most of the time movies and TV shows.
Yeah, I know plenty of movies and all the X-Men games, and there's just tons of them out there. Dime a dozen.
Oh yeah, that's it's money.
All right,
That's what it is.
clearly. All right, so I think we're going to go over kind of we just got our little top 5 list here.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
And we've already went over it, so
yeah,
because we knew we had some similarities, so we're just going to both do our number 5 at the same time.
We have our independent list, but our number 5 is
GoldenEye 007 for the 64.
all right, and I'm sure most of you know this game. It's popular.
Yeah, I mean, if you're alive during this time, then you well, even if you weren't alive during this time, you should know what this game is.
Yeah.
I mean, it made FPSs popular on consoles.
Yes, that was definitely something I wanted to say. I think this game really helped push the envelope for FPSs
Yes.
on a console.
If it wasn't for GoldenEye, there wouldn't be a Halo.
Yeah.
There wouldn't be Call of Duty.
Yeah. I mean, these games could be around, but it would still be a PC market. It would seeing them on the home systems.
Yeah. It was a genre dominated just by the PCs usually, but then Rare comes along, and this was from Rare's heydays.
Yeah.
Back when they were really awesome.
Right.
And they just blow this game out of the water, and really, it was a killer app for the 64. And we gotta talk about the multiplayer.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's what made the game. As the Call of Duties of today,
Yeah.
the focus is the multiplayer. GoldenEye was no different.
But get this, the multiplayer, and I found this out not too long ago, was actually added as just an afterthought.
Really?
It was initially just a single player, which the single player is great.
Yeah.
But the multiplayer was just an afterthought, and they just kind of added in at the last minute. But one thing I just wanted to point out is that I really like the mission structure in GoldenEye, and I really think more games should have that. It's like, I love Perfect Dark, too.
Yeah. I think we can't mention GoldenEye without saying Perfect Dark. We can't get too into it because it's not a licensed game. It's not what we're here to talk about, but definitely Perfect Dark.
Yes.
So, I guess take us on to our number 4s then?
Yes.
Where we actually start getting some deviation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, I picked Turtles in Time, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 4, Turtles in Time for the SNES as my number 4.
Great game.
What I remember the best about this game is that, because since I was so young, I remember being really young and seeing the first Turtles arcade game in the arcade at a bowling alley, really. And the graphics were just awesome. It looked like he was playing the cartoon.
Yeah.
And as a kid, that's awesome.
Yeah, that's what you want.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You want to be your heroes and stuff. They had the port to the NES, but it just wasn't the same. It played awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was called Turtles 2, the arcade game, I think.
I think I know that.
Yeah, and it was based off of that arcade game that started with the burning building.
Burning building, yeah, and the big bowling balls and all the doors.
Yeah.
Or cannonballs, I guess.
Yeah, for no apparent reason.
Yeah.
A pirate on the top floor lost all their cannonballs.
Exactly.
But anyways, but it was Turtles in Time that really captured that arcade feel for me. And not to mention the killer soundtrack and sewer surfing. The box art is really memorable. It elicits so many childhood memories when I see the box art.
Awesome.
Go ahead.
All right, my number 4 is based off another cartoon, sort of. Dragon Ball Z Budokai Tenkaichi 3. And there's a million. It's a mouthful. There's a million other DBZ games out there. Some good, some not good at all.
Yeah.
And there have been several fighting games that have followed since Tenkaichi 3. That just a lot of them are not that good. Tenkaichi 3, so the PS2 and the Wii actually, although I don't think it sold very well on the Wii. I played it once on the Wii, and the controls were incredibly difficult unless you had a class controller, and even then they still didn't quite map out just right. But I played on the PS2, played it for hours, had several nights where I'd have a house full of people, 7 or 8 or more people coming over, just having big DBZ tournaments. Yeah. And this one was just the pinnacle. The combat is fast, it's very active, it's very intuitive, features everything basically from every Dragon Ball, Dragon Ball Z, Dragon Ball GT, over like 100 quote-unquote characters, although they consider the different, like Super Saiyan 1, 2, 3 as a different character, but technically over 100 different either characters or incarnations of a character.
I only got as far as Budokai. That's
and I love Budokai. I loved it. But this one they just did everything right. There's nothing I can say wrong with this game. Sure, sometimes, like most, you have your character imbalances, like, Akuma with Street Fighter, but the kind of feature they had that I liked that we always played was a point buy system, where every character was given a point scale, and you had 10 points to build your team. So you could pick one crazy powerful character, like Super Saiyan 3 or whatever, Goku, it doesn't matter. They'd be like 7 points, or you could buy like a whole bunch of 3-point characters, and it balanced out, so it's like...
there's a layer of strategy there.
Right, exactly. So it was great. The ones all after that just weren't as good. They're so good, but they just have not been all great. The first ones for like the 360, I don't know what they're called. I just remember they changed the combat system up a lot, and then they got all the way up to whatever the most recent one is. Raging Blast 2, I think, was one of the most recent ones. Is almost identical to the Tenkaichi series, so it's really good. And then they did another one after that, but I can't remember all the titles. They weren't as good, but it's hard to go back. This is just, for me, this is my top pick. So that's our number 4s.
Okay. Well, for my number 3, I knew I had to have at least one Star Wars game, and
there's some good ones.
Yes, so I had to pick Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic for the Xbox and later PC, for many reasons. Which it is one of the greatest games of all time, and it's the first game to make me know who BioWare was. Mm-hmm. I know it's Baldur's Gate for a lot of people, but I never played Baldur's Gate.
Same here.
Oh, it was KOTOR before.
A little bit KOTOR, but honestly for me it was more up there with like Mass Effect and Dragon Age. Okay. I played KOTOR, but I didn't really know BioWare at that point.
Mm-hmm. And then a lot of people forget about Jade Empire too.
Hopefully that was on one of those Steam sales they had the other day. That was like a voter's choice.
It seems like none of the picks.
It didn't win, and I wanted to buy that.
It seems none of my picks were winning this time,
I know,
and I'm really mad about that. But it took place 4,000 years before all the other Star Wars, and so that gave BioWare a lot of freedom, which they've exercised that very well, and have since showed what they gained from that experience in later titles. Mm-hmm. The combat system was really addictive, and one of my favorite novelties of it, which wasn't so much a novelty, but I liked how you could pause in the middle of battle, and you could look at each of your characters and see them in the middle of combat is just a pretty unique experience to just stop it whenever you want. And it was really intuitive, and it was easy, and not to mention the awesome story, and it made in my opinion it made BioWare.
That's cool. I could see that, and I'll go and let everybody know KOTOR's not on my list because unfortunately I played it and I like it, but I've never sat all the way through it because I was in a position where the story got spoiled for me, and it's just it's hard for me to get immersed when I already know the twist or whatever at the end. So someday.
Yeah.
Someday.
Someday.
My number 3 is Disney's Magical Quest, starring Mickey Mouse for the Super Nintendo, and
which is made by Capcom.
Yes, this is a Capcom game. Which I love Capcom.
Capcom and Disney seem to mesh perfectly together.
Apparently so.
It's like DuckTales and...
Oh, yeah. They did Goof Troop, I think?
What? I was going to say Chip 'n Dale Rescue Rangers for the NES.
That was a good one. I remember the cat flicks like his cigarette ashes at you, which is another licensed game. Hey, right there. Yeah, wasn't even thinking about it. That's another licensed game.
Which game isn't a licensed game?
No, I said that's another licensed game. The Chip and Dales.
Oh, yeah.
Licensed game. We didn't even just segue right into that. But yeah, so Mickey's Magical Quest, played it a lot as a kid growing up. I still have it to this day. And just the art style is really good. It's simple, so it ages well. You know, that's the thing, rather than going with 3D polygons with things like GoldenEye and stuff, where now you look at it and you're like, oh, that's painful to the eyes.
You can see why cell shading is so...
Yeah.
Well,
It still gets used.
Yes, cell shading is good for not aging games, even though cell shading has nothing to do with this.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just an observation that cell shading shaded games age a lot more better, like if you compare Ocarina of Time and Wind Waker to nowadays.
Exactly. So, yeah, the graphics, the sprites are really nice, really colorful and vibrant. The level design is really good. You know, all the levels are different. They all have their own feel to them.
Like thematic levels.
Yeah, every level has a theme to it. And Mickey also, the controls are tight. The jumping feels good. You grip. You don't feel like you're missing a ledge by a pixel when maybe you should be hitting it. There's a little bit of combat, similar to Mario, where you're throwing shells or jumping on things. Feels tight. But then also they have kind of a little Capcom, a little Mega Man element thrown in there. With each boss, you get like a new suit. Like he gets a firefighter suit, kind of like a Robin Hood looking suit with like a grappling hook, and so they have all that. And usually that revolves around the boss revolves around beating that. Oh, the wizard suit. That's the first one you get on the second level. You're in like a tree forest area.
And
then just really good music, catchy tunes. I mean, it's a solid game from when Capcom knew what they were doing when it came to making platformers.
Yes.
This was Super Nintendo. They've had all this experience with the Mega Man games and stuff. Mm-hmm. They knew what to do, and they did it. And I just very recently, discovered there's 2 sequels, but I never played those, so gotta get around to that. So,
someday.
Number 3. So. Number 2.
I'm going with Scott Pilgrim versus the World the Game, which it's a fairly recent game.
Mm-hmm.
When it comes to beat 'em ups on the XBLA and PlayStation Network, a lot of people pick Castle Crashers.
Yeah.
But I would have to pick Scott Pilgrim versus the Game because it works. Because for one thing, it's a game that's based off of a comic book that relies heavily from geek pop culture and stuff.
All right. Yeah.
And so it fits. You know that Telltale Games, same people who did Walking Dead and then the Strong Bad games. They first approached the guy who did the Scott Pilgrim graphic novels and said that we want to do a game for you. And he said, I don't think your style of games would really mesh with what Scott Pilgrim is. And so eventually he went with Ubisoft, and they made this side-scrolling beat-em-up that had many references to various games throughout, life and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And but it relied most heavily upon one of my favorite NES games, River City Ransom.
Oh, yeah.
Where you was able to go in stores and buy items and increase your stats. There's some people that didn't like the grinding aspect of it, because sometimes you have to go through multiple passes of a level to get a character strong enough to beat the boss at the end. But I really admired that, and it promoted nice couch game time with friends, and I found it very addictive. And not to mention just all the awesome game references. Like I like the world map.
Uh-huh.
It has all the hills with eyes and warp tunnels on it, just like a regular Mario overworld.
One thing I'd have to say that I agree on the grinding aspect you're talking about is that adds a lot of good replayability too. A beat 'em up, a lot of beat 'em ups like the Ninja Turtles or the Double Dragons or Battletoads is or Streets of Rage. That's actually
Streets of Rage
is once you beat them, that's it. There really isn't much of a challenge, truthfully, to the games. You beat up the bad guys and get to the end of the level, and then you can pretty much you start with what you finish with what you started with. So therefore, you can always beat the boss is always beatable.
Yes.
There's not really a challenge of having to go train or get stronger or progress.
And not to mention with experience points and stuff and leveling up, you gained additional fighting abilities,
Mhm.
and that always made you want to stay with the game to see what you could unlock next, because it was always awesome what you could unlock.
Yeah.
Like double jumping and I can't remember them all right now, but it was really good, and really wish they'd make a sequel, but I don't think they will.
Someday.
Oh,
Well-
and I gotta say, the soundtrack, it was it put the word Anamanaguchi, which is the name of the chiptune band that did the soundtrack, into my lexicon. Because I loved the soundtrack to that game. It had a lot of I've since learned from that game what chiptune music was, and that's one of the best redeeming factors of the game. Not redeeming, I shouldn't say redeeming.
Yeah,
it's
it's
one
not bad.
It was
Standout feature.
the
Okay.
soundtrack.
Yes, awesome. Good deal. Skype Program
Mm-hmm.
versus Le World.
The game.
That game.
The game.
Colon the game. My number 2 is one you have already mentioned. It was your number 4, and that's going to be Turtles 4, Turtles in Time.
Mm-hmm.
For me, this goes a little higher on my list. Just it's probably a little nostalgia plays a role into it, I'm sure.
Uh-huh.
But
You love Turtles.
But I love Turtles. Anyone who knows me knows I'm a massive TMNT fan. You know, I have the comics and the movies.
What was that?
What?
Some sort of big toy.
Oh, this is sort of a big toy trench coat. You're going to LaGuardia, right? You're going to get me caught in the damn movie. It's okay. You're sidetracked. I'm a big Turtles fan, so that plays a huge role. But I just love everything about this game. The soundtrack is phenomenal. The level design is awesome. Every level is unique. You know, from the pirates to the future.
I have something to say when you get
Oh
chance.
yeah, you got all right. Go ahead. Let's hear it.
It was an arcade title originally.
Right.
But then when they ported it, well, I shouldn't say port because it wasn't an exact port, to consoles, namely the SNES, they put the number 4 in it.
Yes.
Because of Turtles 1, Turtles 2, the arcade game, and then Turtles 3, the Manhattan Project.
Yes.
And the Super NES version had additional levels and bosses.
Right.
And that's why the remake that they released years later
on the Xbox
did not
360.
have those extra levels and
Yeah.
bosses
And
because it was a remake of the arcade.
Yeah,
I
and
didn't
that-
learn that until
Yeah.
not too long ago.
Yeah, and that pissed me off to no end because first off, one of my favorite bosses, the spiky evil turtle, is not in there. He's replaced by the original boss, which is like a blob creature. And just forget that.
When I was
Get
doing
that crap.
when I was doing research, I think his name was Cement Man.
Cement Man,
Yeah.
genius. You could have called him like Primordial Soup Man because it took place in Dinosaur Age.
Apparently, he was in the cartoon.
What? Fine.
I don't remember him.
Yeah.
I don't
know
remember.
either, yeah.
But why take a step back to the less superior of the version when doing a remake? Like
Exactly. Like, yeah, that's why I never bought it. You bought it. I played it with you, and then I was like, well, I'm not fucking buying this.
that? Aaron, thank you for taking that bullet from me.
Exactly. So awesome.
Reshelled
Save
my
me
butt.
$10. So yeah, but I love the game. Music, level design, combat is really fluid, really tight. The different mechanics with like the throws and stuff, and then just being able to play as a turtle, and then couch co-op. It's a game that me and a friend can just throw on at any time and just beat through it. Just hey, let's go beat Ninja Turtles. Okay,
Yeah.
turn it on,
Uh-huh.
and
It's mindless fun.
yeah, it is. It is. That's true. It's mindless fun. And then, like you said, the art style. It looks like you're playing the cartoon.
Mhm.
And that is, especially as a kid, that is so important.
It's like you had the arcade at home too.
Yeah. Let's kick show.
Cowabunga. My toe,
Alright.
my toe.
So, before we get to our top picks, we decided to do a few honorable mentions. We each have a couple that, just for one reason or another, good. People might be upset that they weren't on our list, so we decided to just kind of include this as a... Here you go.
Yeah.
So, you
Go
want to go
ahead.
first?
My first honorable mention is Ghostbusters. I think it was released in 2009. I really wanted to include it in the list because I'm such a big Ghostbusters fan, but unfortunately the gameplay doesn't really hold up against some of the better games that are out there.
Right.
But the writing, which was done by Dan Aykroyd and Harold Ramis, which Harold Ramis, rest in peace.
Shalom.
It's basically Ghostbusters 3. I'll probably edit that part out there. But it was really well written, and all the original cast was retaining their roles from the movies, except for Rick Moranis and Sigourney Weaver.
Yeah.
And that was enough to make me play through the game.
Cool.
And my other honorable mention, which I don't see in a lot of lists these days, and it really bothers me that you don't see this, but Astro Boy: The Omega Factor for Game Boy Advance. It was made by Treasure of Gunstar Heroes fame and Radiant Silvergun. And even though I hate to mention Ikaruga,
Yeah. I don't know what that is.
kind of overrated in my opinion, but it had really nonstop and addictive action from level to level, and it was a great beat 'em up.
Cool. All right. My honorable mentions, some that I'm sure that's made a ton of lists, is The Walking Dead, not the first-person shooter, the Telltale Games.
Telltale Games Season 1.
Season 1, and then the recent release Season 2. And the reason this didn't make my list, or I think really either of our lists, is unfortunately we have not really played through them to completion.
Yeah, so it's not fair for us to put it.
Even though I played it and I know it's good, I can't give it a fair judgment until I've really had more time with it. I'm sure if we ever did it a amended list, it would probably make the cut.
Uh-huh.
But as of now, it is where it is. And then the other one, and this one I had a hard time with, was Kingdom Hearts. It's got to go on the honorable. It's got to go on the honorable mention list. The reason it doesn't make the cut is the Kingdom Hearts itself. The game is not a licensed game per se. It's an original IP.
It's original, yeah.
But it has lots of licensed material in it.
Mm-hmm.
And
And takes heavily from those.
Exactly. So that's why it officially didn't really make the cut. Is it's not technically a licensed game. It's a original property featuring a lot of licensed property.
Uh-huh.
So that's why.
And well done too.
Yeah, well done. But
Which,
unfortunately, that's why Kingdom Hearts, though, as a series, doesn't quite make this list.
if you had to pick Kingdom Hearts 1 or 2, what would you pick?
I wish I could choose half of both. I wish I could choose the
story
story of the first one and the combat of the second, because the combat puts the first one to shame.
Yeah.
But man, the story, it's like there's no reason to go to the levels, you know? That's the great about the first one. It's like there was a reason to go to the world. The second one, it's like, now you're going to Peter Pan world, because you're going to go to Peter Pan world.
Let's advance the story between worlds.
Yeah, exactly. Like, the only time the story advanced, really, was the original content worlds.
Yeah.
Not the Disney worlds had nothing to do with the overall story.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sure they did a little bit, but it was like so shoehorned.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So honorable mentions. That's going to bring us to the tops.
Yes, to the tops. Which, if you're watching this for the first time, I'm sure you're probably expecting what our top pick is going to be, because it is a very popular pick.
Yeah. I'll go with mine first.
Okay, go ahead.
My number one pick is Batman Arkham City.
Yes.
For the current gen, current-ish gen stuff.
You old man, get with the times.
Like in my day, we had 2 buttons and we liked it.
This wobbly stick thing feels broken. Just give me 1 joystick and a button. That's all I need.
That's all I need. But yeah, Arkham City, fantastic game. Truly did Batman justice. You got a little bit of detective mode. You have awesome combat that some games have copied, but honestly not enough. It feels like it's a solid combat system. I'd be fine with other games ripping it off.
The combat system is great. I think more games should copy off of that game.
Right. I think overall has a pretty solid story. My main drawback, I would say, is that it does feel a little scattered because there's so much. There's almost too much content.
Yeah.
So you're constantly hunting down all these different villains.
But at the same time, that's why so many people would pick that at the top of their list,
and
because
that
there's
is
so much content.
Yeah, and that is a pro for me too. Is I do love the massive amounts of content to it. That was one of my beefs with the original. Was it felt a little more linear, and this was a little more open world. you had a lot of extra content with it, and just so much to do. You know,
Yeah.
it's Grand Theft Auto Batman.
And not to mention the score.
Yes. I can't even do it.
I couldn't do it either, but if I heard it, I'd know what it was.
You would know it.
It's like you don't hear many scores these days from much games.
Yeah. So it's hard to call a game perfect, but for me this game does so little wrong. I can't call it perfect because it's not, but it does so little wrong that I gotta give it my number one spot.
Exactly.
So that leads us to
I respect that, but I'm gonna do the oddball thing here and pick for my number one pick Batman Arkham Asylum.
Yeah.
And I have
the original.
Yes, the original, which made me recognize the name Rocksteady Studios now, which I don't even know of anything else that they've made, but
I'm sure
just keep them making Batmans. Well, actually, I hear that Arkham Knight is supposed to be the last of the trilogy.
The Rocksteady series.
Well, no, like the concluding concluding chapter of the Arkham story.
Not counting because Arkham Origins obviously being the prequel.
Yeah.
So, okay.
But Arkham City was a great, open world game, and had a lot of great factors. But there was one of the main things I'm going to have to say that Arkham Asylum had over Arkham City, and it can be said just one word, and that was Scarecrow.
Yep.
Scarecrow.
I gotta go. Yeah, you're right. That's absolutely you're right.
The Scarecrow segments in that game are so memorable that it's like one of my favorite parts of the game is when Batman is...
Spoiler alert.
Spoiler alert!
Continue. If you don't want to get spoiled, just skip to the end of the video.
Yeah.
And be done.
We're going to do this. We're going to make it through this. Was when Batman is hallucinating and that he's in the place of the Joker in the opening sequence of the game, which the opening of the sequence of the game was awesome and put you and really set a tone for the entire game. You walking through Arkham Asylum and seeing each of your old nemesis as you walk through, and knowing you're going to confront them later in the game. It's really rewarding.
Yeah.
But you're in the place of Joker in that stretcher thing, and Joker finally pulls out a gun. It's like, let's start this with a bang. And you supposedly you get a continue screen, and it says wiggle the middle mouse stick to dodge the bullet. And it's like, what? It's like it's intentionally put there to mess with your head, and that's what the Scarecrow's all about. And not to mention the part where it shows him like reliving his parents' death and everything.
Yeah.
Just really well done, and I'm really excited he has a much larger role in Arkham Knight.
Yes. I was glad with the E3 trailer it ended with Scarecrow. That lets you know, hey, Scarecrow's coming back, and he's ready to kick some ass and put you through the ringer.
Uh-huh.
And I'm excited for that.
It's like...
I was more excited for that than the friggin' Batmobile, which is what everybody else is.
Yeah, exactly. Also, other things about Arkham Asylum is that, Arkham Asylum itself was a great set piece for the game, and mixing the Metroid-like feel of gaining an item and then being able to advance throughout the island. I really like that, not to mention the fluid combat, as you mentioned, only made better in Arkham City. But Scarecrow, for me, puts Arkham Asylum more memorable than anything else.
I agree. That was my number one thing from the Asylum game was Scarecrow. So I will allow you to have your opinion.
Thank you. You're very kind.
Yes.
You can take that gun down now.
All right. Let me make this cocking noise, even though it should already be loaded, and I've just ejected the shell. So,
yes. Thank you for covering your squares there.
Yeah, exactly.
Because you don't want anybody pointing out that you were
cocking,
wasting a bullet.
I hate that in movies, but that's all. That's a topic for another day. So there you are. There's our licensed games.
Yeah, our top 5 licensed games in our personal top 5 lists.
Yeah.
We appreciate you taking the time to listen to our video, practically listening.
All right. So again, this has been Dan,
and this is Aaron,
and this is
Something Powered.